Hi, this is Jen Rubin, and this is Jen Rubin's Green Room. We have no shortage of news this week. First of all, Michael Cohen completed his direct examination and underwent the cross-examination. Now, many in the media are exercised over a point in the testimony in which Michael Cohen seemed to be confused about whether he had called Trump about a certain issue or had called Kurt Schiller, who's an aide, about a different issue. It was so minor in the greater scheme of things and so inconsequential to the overall case that I think it points to the gap between how a jury looks at a case and how the media looks for an issue, a controversy, a fight that really has little bearing on the merits of the case. The jury has seen a compelling case over days, over weeks, in which Michael Cohen's testimony is almost an afterthought. They have a series of witnesses, a series of documents that absolutely lay down brick by brick the prosecution's case. Trump knew about the scheme. He approved the scheme. He knew the scheme involved hush money to Stormy Daniels, not to some legal fee arrangement with Michael Cohen. And he very much wanted this taken care of before the election because he knew if it came out, it would be a disaster. That's all you really need to know about the case, and that's the case that the jury has seen. Whether one conversation or another conversation included one topic or two topics is wholly irrelevant. And let me tell you, that's not how a jury thinks. A jury looks at a case and says, what's the totality of the evidence here? And I think it's just overwhelming. Now, meanwhile, you continue to have this cavalcade of mini-me's, these members of Congress who troop up to the courtroom, all dressed like Trump. Instead of red and black armbands, they have blue suits and red ties, to put too fine a point on it. But it's a disgusting association with a individual who, remember, is on trial for paying hush money to a woman he had sex with just after his son was born. And the purpose of the hush money is to prevent the American people from finding out what a sleazebag he is. That's what this case is about. And that's what commands the attention and the support of these members of Congress. Even worse, Matt Gaetz sends out a tweet that says, "We're standing back and standing by." That's the Proud Boys. That's what the members of Congress are saying. They are identifying with an insurgent, violent movement, many of whose members are now sitting in jail. So it's a frightful sight from members of Congress, but not as frightful as what we have learned from the New York Times. Unbelievably, this is coming out only now, but we learned from a front page bombshell report that over Sam Alito's house in the days after January 6th, when the court was still considering a case, that there flew a flag, an upside-down American flag, that is a symbol and was a symbol of the MAGA movement and the violent insurrectionists. This was flying over a Chief Justice's home. Imagine if, I don't know, a justice on the Supreme Court were flying a hammer and sickle, for example. Imagine if a justice had a elect Barack Obama flag flying over her house. This would be a scandal, and it should be, and it is. Now, the justice says he wasn't the one who put it up there. His wife was. What difference does it make? He presumably went outside his house and saw it there. There are enough pictures and enough neighbors who saw this over several days that he left up there. The obligation of any judge, let alone a Supreme Court judge, is that you not only are unbiased, but you never give the appearance of bias. Identifying with an insurrectionist group that is trying to overthrow the Constitution, that's not only bias, but that's really an abrogation of his oath of office. He's in the business of upholding the Constitution. And here he has a flag flying around over his home that says, never mind the Constitution, we want to win. That's a scandal by any stretch of the imagination. And it's even more a scandal because, of course, he is now considering a case on the immunity of Donald Trump for having instigated that insurrection. This is mind-blowing. This puts all other scandals of the court, all its other improprieties, all its biases to shame. And what are we going to do about it? Well, there's a short-term solution and there's a long-term solution. The long-term solution requires that Senator Dick Durbin, get off his duff and get onto the floor of the Senate promptly a mandatory ethics bill that includes things like you shouldn't identify with a political movement, you shouldn't fly symbols of a political movement over your house, and more important, to have a absolutely enforceable mechanism for recusal, for discipline, and for keeping judicial norms in place. That's essential. And the Democrats in this election, in the longer scheme, have to put court reform front and center. We cannot allow a court this biased, this compromised by both Justice Alito and Justice Thomas, whose wife was involved in the coup, who is also sitting on these cases, to destroy what's left of the credibility of the court. And that means not only mandatory ethics, but it means term limits. And frankly, at this point, I think we need to expand the court. These people's influence is too great. The court is too corrupt by their presence. And it is perfectly legitimate to support a independent and credible Supreme Court by adding to its ranks. And Democrats should make no bones about it and come out and say it. But there is an immediate issue. There is an immediate concern that the court itself has to address, and that is this immunity case. The wide perception is that this court has delayed and delayed, making it virtually impossible for Donald Trump to be tried for staging an insurrection before the next election. As shocking as that may be, they have delayed, they have taken more time on this than they've taken on many other cases. They are about to exceed the time it took for them to determine the 14th Amendment case, and they are dithering. They are dithering with the absolute objective of making it more difficult for Trump to face the music. That's what Trump wants, and that's frankly what it appears the court is doing. If Chief Justice Roberts and, frankly, Amy Coney Barrett, who seems to have some institutional spine, do not want this court to wind up in ruins, do not want this court to be seen as having enabled an insurrectionist to gain re-election, they need to force a prompt decision from the court, and they need to join with the three progressives in cutting bait. They have to have a clear, direct decision that does not lead to further proceedings below, does not lead to an interlocutory appeal after that, that essentially says nothing that Trump has done in support of a insurrection as a candidate trying to retain power unconstitutionally can possibly be subject to a immunity defense. Now, they don't have to decide one for the ages, as Justice Gorsuch said. Far from it. They need to decide this case, they need to decide it quickly, and they need to decide it in such a way that Trump gets to trial promptly, and that perhaps we even get to a verdict before November. Because if they don't, and if they let the Justice Thomases and the Justice Alitos hijack this court, they will have ruined its reputation permanently. They will have discredited the court, and they will have done Trump's bidding in dismantling and permanently injuring our democratic process. That's what we face right now. And when you consider that this Supreme Court has already had a historic drop in its integrity and credibility, according to the American people. Its approval is at an all-time low. After this, it will be in disgrace, as it should be. But again, there's a way out. The Chief Justice, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, and the liberals can show that the court really is an independent institution, is not in the thrall of the insurrectionists, is not in league with Donald Trump, and issue a quick, decisive opinion sending him back to trial before the election. So, to a large degree, the survival of our democracy, the survival of the rule of law, depends upon 12 jurors in New York and depends upon at least 5 members of the Supreme Court. But ultimately, it depends on Congress willing to rein in the court and on the voters who have to see that our institutions are in distress. Congress is in distress, being controlled, at least in one house, by a group of absolutely unfit, undemocratic, anti-democratic Republicans who sow chaos, who sow nihilism, and who identify with rabble. It is under distress at the Supreme Court, and if we allow Trump to get to the White House, it will be the trifecta of Democratic doom. So ultimately, we get the government we deserve, and we will get the election that we deserve. So vote, volunteer, get people you know to volunteer, and support the cause of democracy, because what we've seen this week is only a prelude to what could be a complete implosion of our democratic system. So, if you enjoyed this program and you enjoy our other programs, please tell your friends. They can listen and follow. Click right there and follow our program on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever they get their podcasts. Bye-bye.